This year, I challenged myself. I challenged myself to grow all my seedlings from seed in my small apartment with limited space available, without grow lights or south-facing windows. Yes, I know, an almost impossible task, because the plants need light to grow. But I'm stubborn, and because last year I had some success with tomato seedlings, I wanted to try to grow all my plants this year. A huge goal for this season, and also a scary one. Because what if I fail? The plan is to use this window as the growing space for my seedlings, build some shelving and place all my seed trays on it, until my plants aren't ready to be planted outside. For the shelving, I didn't complicate things. I bought the cheapest shoe rack that I could find that will hold my trays perfectly. And the best part is that it fits perfectly on my shelf, using almost all the available space. So, while I'm constructing the shelves for my seed trays, let me tell you how and why I choose this location as the growing space for my seedlings. In a perfect world, I would have several south-facing windows that would function as the growing space for my seedlings. Or even better, a greenhouse outside my apartment. But I have neither of those. As you may know, seedlings need light to develop into healthy growing plants. If they don't have enough sunlight, they will get stretchy and weak, as the brassica seedlings that you are seeing that are stretching up to reach more sunlight. This stretching is not desirable, but fortunately I have a trick to solve this problem that I will show you in a minute. The second best thing I could have to grow my seedlings indoors would be an east and a west facing window, so I could have my trays on the east facing window in the morning and on the west facing window in the evening. In that way the plants would receive the most sun possible. Wonderful, I have an east and a west facing window. But there's a problem. The window shelf on the east facing window is small. So small that I couldn't fit all my seed trays on it. So the only thing that I'm left with is not ideal, I know, but I will try to work around it, is to place all my seed trays on this west facing window and hope for the best. Now that I have the shelves that will hold my seed trays ready, it's time to transplant all the sprouts into the tray cells. For that I will need a huge IKEA container that will contain all the mess, so my wife won't get mad at me, leaving all the soil around the apartment. A good vacuum cleaner can also help me with that. This container is especially handy if you live in a small apartment and you're transplanting your seedlings in your bedroom and not in your basement or out in the garden. Next, I will need some potting mix. I don't have much experience with brands, but I used this mix last year and had good drainage, good water retention properties, zero diseases and enough nutrients that allow me to grow my tomato transplants. And I will also need some seed trays. I would recommend you to invest in some good quality seed trays here and don't buy the cheapest ones made out of paper thin plastic that will disintegrate just by looking at them. Buy seed trays made out of hard plastic that will last you a lot longer than one season. The only problem I have with seed trays is that I don't have enough space for lots and lots of them. Imagine that I would grow all my transplants in this 24 cell seed tray. I would need 12 of them, and I don't have enough space for that. That's why I did some research on what is the minimum seed tray size I could use to fit all my plants in this small space. I found out that cells in seed trays are designed to have the right amount of soil to grow seedlings for a specific amount of time. So seed trays with lots of cells are meant to be used with crops that won't stay long in them, like lettuce. And seed trays with larger cells are meant to be used with plants that will grow in them for a few months, like peppers. Wonderful news for me. I can use this small cell seed tray that has 92 cells to grow my lettuce, broccoli, cauliflower and cabbage that will go into my garden a good 6 weeks earlier than my tomatoes and peppers. And for those, I can use the bigger seed trays with 24 cells. And this will save me some space, because instead of 4 seed trays with 24 cells, I can use only one 92 cell seed tray instead. Now I have my seed trays ready, filled with some good potting mix. I have my seeds sprouted and if you follow me, you know that all my seeds were germinated with the paper towel method with good results. I have my labels ready, and now it's time to select the best sprouts and plant them. I will choose the sprouts that don't have too long of a root, nor the smallest one, and if I will see some that didn't germinate, I will throw them away. When removing the sprouts from the paper towel, I'm careful to not damage the genital root that has grown, and I try to avoid any snapping noise, indicating that something broke. Now that I selected all the best sprouts, it's time to plant them. This is an easy task, relaxing in a way, especially if we have lots of sprouts to plant. I usually plant them by making a hole with a pencil that is slightly larger and deeper than the seedling root, and then I gently place it into the hole, pressing lightly around it to secure it in place. If the sprouts have already sprouted the leaves, I try to plant them to their leaves, but if there are no leaves on site, I plant them just a hair under the soil surface. The only thing left now that I have planted them is to water them, and the best way to do it is to water them from underneath. And here the large container comes handy, because I can fill it with water and leave the seed trays in it until the soil has soaked enough water to get saturated. In this way, you can't overwater your seedlings. Remember how I told you I will show you a trick how to save leggy seedlings? Let me show you with my tomatoes. Because I knew they will grow a little bit leggy, I planted them in the smaller cells, so they will take up less space and I could easily do this trick that I'm about to show you. The trick is to transplant your plants deeper, up until they're true leaves, and to do this trick there are a few things you need to watch out for. The first being that you wait at least until you see the first true leaves growing. It's best that you wait a little bit longer so that they will develop a bigger root system. I would wait too, but as you can see, my seed tray is full and I need more space for other seeds to grow. With a bigger root system, it will also be easier to push them out of their growing cell, just by pressing from the bottom part. And here be careful and follow the second trick I can give you. The trick is that you don't leave them up by their stem, because you can damage the fragile capillary in the stem that brings all the nutrients from the roots to the plant, but leave them up by their fake leaves, or also known as cotyledons. Those are the leaves that first appear after the seed have sprouted. By lifting them up by the cotyledons, you don't need to worry if they break off, because they already did their job and don't have a use anymore. The actual transplanting is kind of similar what I made with the sprouts. Here I took a large pot that will serve as a home for my tomatoes until I transplant them outside. Fill the pot with soil, press it lightly and then make a hole that will allow me to plant my tomatoes up until the first leaves. If you have few tomatoes growing in the same cell, you can gently divide them and plant them separately. Now I just need to repeat the same process for all my tomatoes or until I transplanted all the like buttons. After another few weeks of waiting, finally the time to plant them outside came, and with it the path to my demise. But at that time I didn't know that. I was happy, the sun was shining, I thought my transplants were ready to be transplanted outside, and the only thing left to do was to make the square foot garden grid and plant them with the appropriate plant spacing. Little I knew, I planted them one day too early. No, it wasn't a late frost that killed them, nor the slugs. What killed them was my lack of judgment and the inability to check the weather forecast before planting. See, when I planned the day when I will plant my transplants outside, it was the only sunny day in a long run of rainy days. Perfect days for transplants, because the sun is not so strong, plus they get constantly watered by Mother Nature. And see, by not checking the weather forecast just before planting them, I missed that it changed. Instead of one sunny day, there were two. This meant that instead of so-called perfect conditions, my fragile transplants will get burned in the scorching sun. Yes, if I would have the time and space to harden my plants, I wouldn't need to worry about this. But I don't. And that's why I need to be really careful when I plant my transplants outside. This was a simple mistake to make that can cost me all the hard work so far. By the time of transplanting them, I was clueless. I enjoyed the first full sunny day in the garden after this long winter. And then, the next day, the big surprise. Like the forecast predicted, it was sunny. I rushed into the garden as soon as I could, but it was too late. All the hard work gone in about 24 hours or so. The sun literally burned all the leaves from my plants. At this time I could cry in despair, but I rather stay positive, and after a few moments of thinking, I came up with a plan B and plan C. With a close inspection, I saw that some of the leaves were still intact, meaning that the plant is still alive and it can recuperate its former glory. The only problem with this plan is that I know the plant are in shock now and their growth will be stunted for a little bit. So that's why I need the plan C. From previous years, I know that I can plant my brassica plants up until the 15th of May and I can still get a harvest. Now, if my surviving plants won't recuperate the growth until the 15th of May, I will need to buy new transplants and plant them instead. Sometimes it's best to know when it's better to start over. I learned this lesson last year with my cucumbers that got stunted in the beginning of the season with a late frost and never recuperate fully. Now, if you want to see what raised bed gardening mistake I did and how I will avoid them with square foot gardening, follow me in the video that pop on the screen. If you like the video, don't forget to like it and subscribe so you won't miss any other gardening tips and tricks. Happy gardening!